Hello class, Rob McComas here bringing you my final research project, the Shaker Movement in America. And hey, I just want you to know it's been a joy taking this class, and I've really enjoyed being your classmates, and I look forward to bringing you this final research paper. Hopefully, hopefully you enjoyed as much as I have enjoyed doing it. And let's jump right in. Let's jump right in right away. The the Shaker movement in America. The Shakers, formerly known as the United Societies of Believers in Christ's Second Appearing, was formed by Mother Ann Lee. Okay, Mother Lee was she certainly was a, I don't want to say a polarizing figure, because to the Shakers she meant everything, but some of the policies put in place by Mother Lee certainly had a lot to do with the downfall of the Shakers. She was the daughter of a blacksmith and a mill hand, and according to Nardi Capione, who wrote Mother Ann Lee, the Morning Star of the Shakers, she was guided by what Lee would describe as divine visions and signs. And she came to the American colonies in 1774, and the primary reason was to, you guessed it, escape the Church of England. And her parents were members of the Society of Friends. Her family was so poor that they could not even give her a basic education. And so we have Lee coming to the American colonies, and basically she started off with very few members. Frederick William Evans wrote the origins of the who wrote the origins of the Shakers, said that Lee sought a more passionate worship experience, and she wished to become more personal with religion, and that is why she left the Church of England at that time to come to America. And Lee would join what was called the Wardley Society, and that was led by Jane and James Wardley in 1758. So that is the foundation there of how Lee got her involvement within the Shakers. Okay, so we have the Wardley Society, we have Lee coming to America a little later on, and now I want to speak to you about what a worship service was actually like within the Shakers. Well, if you were to actually go to one, they were very passionate. Okay, um, Stephen Stein, who wrote the Shaker Experience, spoke of um, worship services, and the Wardley vision of worship. And in other words, what they wanted, how they envisioned a worship service being, or what a worship service should be. Uh, this included shaking of the arms, the head, and so forth. They became known as the Shaking Quakers. Eventually, that was dropped, and they just became known as the Shakers. And at the height of the Shaker movement, right around 1850 or so, you had about 5,000 members. Okay, so and from what I had researched, um, Stein along with others, they they wrote that worship service could almost become violent. I mean, they were so passionate with their worship services, and we'll touch on the music in a minute. But when they sang in tongue. Okay, they sang in unknown languages, and in tongue, and they would often flail their body about uncontrollably. Um, so one could understand how that, I don't want to say get out of control, but you could probably get hurt during a worship service like that. Okay, now Martin Kosgel, in the commitment process in a religious commune, spoke about the four basic beliefs of the Shakers. So they taught celibacy, sexual intercourse, and that it was the root of sin. And they believed that in partaking of communion, and they also believed that sin should be confessed. Another one that they believed in was the separation from the world. And guys, the first and the last are really what did a number on the Shakers when we talk about the downfall of the Shakers. As the world progressed, and at the height of the Shaker movement, what we saw was the Shakers hold very firm to their belief in celibacy, and they held very firm to their belief in separation of the world. And Cosgel would speak of this, and he would say that really that is what brought the Shakers to their knees. Not only Cosgel, but other sources as well. In a progressing society, separation from the world and celibacy, in abstaining from sex in any form, would be a hard pitch. And so, as the world progressed, the Shakers declined. And another aspect that could possibly have influenced the decline of the Shakers is that Mother Ann Lee was viewed as the female version of Messiah. Okay, so if you held a traditional, balanced Bible belief, okay, that may be a tough pill to swallow. Most conservative or traditional valued Christians during that time certainly did not hold that belief. And so that in my view was also a contributing factor. Other beliefs included gender neutrality, believing that God was both male and female. And so we could see how some of these views would certainly be hard on a traditional Christian belief. Ken Burns actually would go on and touch on the family life of the Shakers. He did a documentary for PBS, and he talked about how families supported themselves, which was by way of farming, and it was communal living. Okay, so in communal living, it was tough sledding. Okay, everybody pulled their weight. Nothing came easy. It started in Mount Lebanon, New York, in 1787, and the lead ministry directed everyone to join these communal settlements. A typical size of communal settlement was about 50 to 150 people. Okay, so you had a nice group of people living in a single home. Okay. And the first communal home was at Waterlivet, located in a town called Colony. Okay, so a man named Moses Johnson directed the building of this home, but he built roughly about 10 others as well. So Moses Johnson stepped in and he erected these communal homes, and so he literally laid the foundation for communal living. So Johnson built these homes basically up until he died. The Shakers today, to put it bluntly, that the one of the last remaining Shakers, there was 3 alive as of 2017, and one of the last remaining Shakers, according to my research, died when Sister Frances Carr passed away from cancer. This is according to a Washington Post article that I have listed there in the sources. Even in her last days, she did not want to be one of the last Shakers, and she was hoping that the faith would grow again. So Sister Carr went to her grave, and one of her last wishes was that the faith would eventually grow again. So I just want to talk to you a little bit about um, the musical aspect. I feel like when we look at the history of music, we can learn so much about a faith, and the music of the Shakers really should not surprise anyone because according to James Crossway and Christian Goodwillie, Millennial Praises, a Shaker hymnal, wrote that from the very beginning in the 1770s, singing was an important part of worship service for the Shakers, and they write that um, when the Shakers would sing, it was in an unconventional method. They would sing in tongue, and they were wordless, and they were expressed with enthusiastic vocalizations. Okay, so it wasn't until the middle part of the 19th century, um, probably around 1840, as the Shakers moved toward Kentucky and Ohio, that they started to print hymnals. Okay, now the reason for that was not as Crossway would write, is not necessarily to get away from the speaking in tongues and the vocalizations when they sang, but it was for the recruitment of new membership. They felt like to be able to draw people into the church that they had to print music to grow the faith. Okay, so so they printed hymn books, actually written songs, to grow the faith. Now, guys, the after the height of the Shaker movement, when there was about 5,000 people, um, it was a slow in 1850. About 1850, there was about 5,000 people, and that was the height of the Shaker movement, and it was on a steady decline ever since then. Okay, and Richard Francis, who wrote The Ann World, the story of Ann Lee, female Messiah, mother of the Shakers, he touched on the issues of what brought the Shakers down, what brought the Shakers to their knees, and the reason that the church did not grow. Okay, so, and those two big reasons were celibacy and separation from the world. And when we talk about celibacy within the Shaker community, we're going to see that was the main reason that started the downfall of the Shakers. And they did not tread lightly on this topic. It was taken very seriously, and if one chose to break this rule of celibacy, they would find themselves not only out of the church, but out of their communal home as well. So basically, they would be homeless. Okay, so the other issue was separation from the world, and as Francis would say, that as society progressed, okay, as society moved forward, the Shakers were stuck in a different time frame. Okay, so it was of utmost importance to the Shakers that they kept to themselves and they practiced celibacy. And as the world went forward, the Shakers stayed put, and therefore membership declined as the elders started to die. There was no influx of new members, and insto de facto, you have the makings of a faith completely dying out, and that's what's happened. That's what happened with Sister Carr. She was one of the last ones remaining, of course. So, with that being said, it's important that I think if we use the Shakers as an example, okay, if we use the Shakers as an example and we think about how to keep church membership alive and how to grow the faith, I think it's important as society progresses, the church progresses as well. Now, I'm not necessarily saying give up on traditional values or give up on what you believe. I'm not saying that at all. I do feel that the reason that the Shakers declined, to me, they just did not teach biblically sound information, and that eventually led to the downfall of the Shakers. Guys, I've greatly enjoyed this course. I enjoyed bringing you information about the Shakers, and I hope you've enjoyed listening. I wish you guys the very best, and God bless.